The goal today is to discuss EOS at a high level and then dive into this idea of L10 meetings and the IDS, which is really the root of all sorts of wonderful things when it comes to the EOS philosophy. We're going to have that discussion in the light of AI and how it can be involved in the process. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how I use AI and also just talk through some different ideas and suggestions and ways that you might use AI in the future as you are working with your team. Let's just dive in here. So first of all, let's talk about what is EOS, right? Just to rephrase. And I think everybody is generally going to be familiar here with the idea of EOS, but just to define it for anyone who is new, EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And the idea of EOS is that you are creating more accountability, more visibility in your organization, having better data, building more healthy systems, and really creating a company that is set up to scale and ready for you to grow to whatever you want it to be. Now, what are some common issues that we see here? Many times, actually, I was just on a call with a company not 15 minutes ago with a PM company who is in the middle of a major culture strike. They are working on bringing together a company that they originally owned with a company that they have recently acquired. And while that's a pretty cool problem to have, the challenge that they're having is a major cultural problem. The teams do not play well together. And so they're now dealing with these really significant issues around really infighting and ultimately a lack of cultural unanimity. So there's two different companies that are really just fighting against each other and not really getting where they need to get to. Now, enter EOS, right? Using an entrepreneurial operating system or really a way of thinking in an organized structure, we're going to work with them to create more accountability, help that team to be unified around their goal, and move to that next level where there isn't infighting, where roles are clearly defined, and all sorts of other wonderful things that can be. We'll move past that for now, but just keep in mind, EOS, if you've not learned about it before, I'd encourage you highly to look up the book Traction, written by Gino Wickman. Absolutely fantastic, and we'll talk you all through this idea of EOS. Now, let's talk about the L10, right? That's the EOS. EOS structure is really about building structure and creating more accountability in your organization. The L10 meeting specifically is about solving problems, about driving focused issues instead of just being really scattered, and then also measuring results over time. That's a really big piece. As we are being systematic in using an L10 meeting, we're going to be recording over time how well we're doing and where there are changes and improvements. Now, why does AI matter in all this? AI doesn't have to matter. The reality is that you can do any of this without AI. Having any structure at all is a big improvement over everything just flying in the wind. Bringing in EOS is a major level up. But adding AI, or I like to use ChatGPT, it's easy, essentially free, and that's just an incredible way to kind of level things up, especially when it comes to your planning. Believe it or not, ChatGPT is incredibly well versed in the methods of EOS. All it takes is some reasonable prompts to get it to start asking you the right questions. We're going to talk a little bit about how to use that. Now, again, just a little bit of a refresher here on what an L10 meeting looks like. There's usually at the very beginning a short segue. This is really just everybody shows up, quick highs and lows, how you doing? Then you're going to move into your scorecard. So we're going directly from the initiation of the meeting into the primary measurable, which is our scorecard. And we're looking at scorecards on a company level. We're then looking at rocks. Rocks, again, are your big objectives that you're trying to do for your quarters. Then we're going to look at headlines, major issues that happen within the company or within your team or customer base. And we look at our to-do lists, right? What are we responsible for? Where do we need to keep people accountable? And then we're going to move into the IDS, or identify, discuss, and solve. And as mentioned, this is really the meat of the L10 meeting. After that's wrapped up, we conclude. One of the things that we like to do, which isn't a specific L10 thing or an EOS thing, but a practice that we like, is to vote on the success of the meeting, right? Did we actually have a fruitful meeting? And we rate that meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, and no sevens are allowed, right? This is really because sevens are a number of mediocrity. A seven is, it was okay, but it wasn't like terribly sucky, but it wasn't actually amazing, right? Versus a 6 or an 8 delineates. I was like, okay, this actually was not that good, or it was much closer to positive. All right. Now, some common pain points that we see here when we're talking about doing an L10, right? As I laid out this quick format for you, it sounds great on paper. But the reality of this is that can be challenging to do the preparation work that needs to be done in order for this to really be helpful. And some of the common issues that we observe here is prep time, right? It's hard to accumulate all the information and have things set up. Scorecards can be like really broad and it's hard to measure or know if it's really meaningful data. IDS can take a really long time and it may suck up a really big portion of your day. Or maybe even the to-dos that you're delineating are vague and not really well defined. Now, where AI can help you here is in summarizing, in flagging, and all sorts of things. So just as an example, you can, if you have a scorecard, let's say in this case, we're looking at, let's say maintenance, right? So if you're having an L10 meeting around maintenance and you want to look at ticket times, you can upload a list, just a CSV or an Excel sheet of all of your current maintenance tickets and ask ChatGPT to summarize updates on what's going on all those maintenance tickets. You can ask it for average time. You can ask to highlight the ones that are longest. Are there any where, the notes indicate that there are specific issues or things that need to be addressed? And it'll do that, right? It's crazy how fast it will be too, right? You'll have answers in just a few seconds. You can also have it flag things that look like they are incomplete. Now, to be fair, some of this takes a little bit of training, right? You have to prompt your AI. You might want to say something like, I need you to be an expert in analyzing maintenance data for a small property management company of X number of doors in this area. And what we're trying to achieve is this, right? Giving it very specific parameters, and it will give you excellent feedback. All right, you can even ask it to surface issues, right? To look at that data and to make some conclusions for you, right? And tell you, you should probably be talking about this. Okay. Now, another way that you can use AI is trends elsewhere, right, in the company. So you can look at sales data, really any way that you can load information into ChatGPT via a spreadsheet or even just a Google document or something like this. It can review all that data and give you tons of feedback. Now, depending on how you are running your L10s, we currently run our L10s through Notion, and Notion has some really excellent embedded AI and is also able to do much of what I just described that ChatGPT can do. But if you are not using Notion, which is totally fine, you probably are going to be using a Word document or a Google document. And that is the perfect tool for this next type of prompt where you are having ChatGPT actually look reflectively on your past performance, right? Your past records for your level 10 meetings and pulling conclusions or areas where you're off track, right? It can look at your previous scorecard data and see how well you're doing in relation to the timeline that you've made a commitment towards completion. I.e., if we want to have maintenance tickets, just furthering that idea, if we want to have maintenance tickets have an average time frame of, let's call it 10 days or less by the 4th of July, then how well are we doing based on where we're at today and when we started, right? Our goal is to accomplish this in this time frame. Are we actually on track? And it can tell you, right? It can tell you, are we actually moving the needle? Are we making the progress that we need to make? Similarly, you can use this in reviewing rocks, right? And again, based on how these are documented, you can give status updates based on notes that you may have. There's all sorts of things here. However, the real gold mine and opportunity here is in IDS. Now, again, just identifying our terms here. IDS stands for identify, discuss, and solve. And in an L10 meeting, this is really the bulk of the conversation. You want to spend probably at least 75%, 70 to 75% of your time in this meeting in IDS. And the reason for this is meetings need to be productive, right? We don't just want to have meetings for the sake of having meetings. That would be stupid. We all have a little enough amount of time as it is. So rather, we want to be as efficient as possible and use our time to solve problems so that we can walk away from this L10 meeting with real actionable results. Now, how do you use ChatGPT or any AI in resolving these IDS issues? Again, with time being of the essence, one of the things that we like to do is use ChatGPT to, number one, identify issues, but also to suggest solutions. And one of the ways specifically that I like to do this is in relation to hiring. One of the pieces that I have found to be really helpful is that I can give ChatGPT a walkthrough of what is important to me in hiring. I can detail our company values. Here's what's important to us. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's what our culture looks like today. This is what we want it to look like in the future. And I can ask ChatGPT to give me questions to ask someone who I'm hiring, or even to write a job description based on a specific need that I may have detailed. And that's an incredible way to use ChatGPT. And I've used that in many occasions, even for entry level roles, but even for more senior roles. As we are continuing to develop as a company, one of my projects is to create job descriptions for all of the C-suite roles that need to exist in the future in the company, because we don't have any of those, right? I am the only technical C-suite officer of the company. But at some point in the future, we expect that we'll have a CTO or a CFO. And we're trying to define what that needs to look like ahead of time so that when it gets to the time to find that person, we already have an idea of what that person should look like, the skill set that they need to have, and even more. All right. Another way that you can use ChatGPT in an IDS, again, giving it some context of who you are and how you operate, understanding that in our case, we're an implementation business. For you as a property management business, you want to make sure that your ChatGPT account knows that. You can also have it suggest solutions, right? If you have a challenging scenario, let's say with an owner client who perhaps, let's say they have maintenance that needs to be done at the property, but they don't have the cash to make it happen, or they're just unwilling to spend, you can ask ChatGPT to give you ideas on how to solve this problem. And it will give you fantastic ideas, especially, again, if you give it some of the basis of how you operate. How do you want ChatGPT to think for you so that it's thinking similar to the way that you would think? And it would have the same kind of conclusions and ideas that you would have. So really using ChatGPT as a second brain, as it were, where it's really trying to mirror the way that you would do things. All right. Finally, the last thing that I would use IDS for, or I'm sorry, ChatGPT for in an IDS scenario is to create action items. So as we're going through the solving of the problems, right, we're defining the issues, we find some solutions, and then we need to define to-dos, right? What are the action items and who's responsible? And of course, you need to have deadlines to make sure that the action items are resolved on time. All right. The last thing I want to mention here, if you haven't realized this already, AI is incredibly powerful. ChatGPT is super cool, and I would encourage you to get into it. One of the neat things that has relatively recently rolled out with ChatGPT is that it can access multiple threads. Right. So I can have a thread in one part of ChatGPT, open up an entirely new thread, and indicate that I want it to use what it knows about my business or use what it knows about me personally, even. And then to recognize that data is important as it is giving me these solutions. That's a really fantastic tool that, like I said, I believe is rolled out relatively recently, but I found to be incredibly powerful. Okay, so let's see, we've got Mike's here, Adam is here. Guys, since you are here on the call, if you're able to, I'd love for you to be a little bit of a guinea pig here. And what I'm looking for, if we could, is maybe a real problem that you're trying to solve in your business that we might be able to play with using ChatGPT and see what we can come up with. So, Mike, I see your camera's on here, so I'm going to pick on you. Give me an example of a problem that you're trying to solve in your business right now.
We are trying to figure out how to move our knowledge base from Google Drive into Notion in an efficient manner. And how do we break it up with databases? So my
Okay.
initial thought is I have a process database and a play database, and the individual plays make up the entire process. And I want to know, am I overcomplicating it? And should I just have it in the processes? The reason why I'm thinking about doing it that way is, for example, we have plays that are applicable to multiple processes. So I was going to use synced blocks from plays. So I didn't, so I could keep up with the edits. That's
Okay.
one of the good things about Notion.
All right. And just a clarifying question. The plays, what I'm hearing is that's the principles of how we operate. Is that fair?
No.
No. Okay. Can you
Um,
clarify that for me?
so multiple plays make up the playbook.
Okay.
And instead of saying playbook, we're saying process. So how to onboard a new client has, I don't know, 25 different plays inside of there.
Okay. So the plays are basically actions within the parent process.
Yeah, maybe stages, if you think like from a lead simple perspective.
Okay. So like groups of tasks or stages in a process.
Yeah.
All right. So really the goal here, just to summarize, is to make sure that the information is being stored as efficiently as it can be in Notion. And we've already made the decision to move to Notion, so that's not necessarily a question. And all of the current data is in Google, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, one of the things what we do know up front is that ChatGPT can't build Notion for you. That would be pretty cool. But at some point, that may be possible in the future. Actually, I just saw something yesterday that Wolf Krosky was posting about the new Zapier innovation, where it looks kind of like it's leading in some of that direction. So who knows what may be available around the corner here. But the wonderful part about ChatGPT is an expert on everything, right? So we can ask it to be an expert on Notion. And let me just turn on my screen share here and we'll see what we can put together here. Let's see if I can get this to work. Um,
Not sure if that was the problem you were looking for.
no, this is a great example. Problems are problems, right? They all need to be solved, and it's not necessarily always a clear answer. Let me just clear away some other windows so we can actually look at this.
And while you're doing that, the reason why I'm trying to get there, right, is if I have a remote team member that just has to ask a question about one specific play, how do I renew a rental license? I
Uh-huh.
want that to come up in the wiki when they search Notion.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's see. All right, so turning on the screen share here, so now you guys can actually see what I've got going on. So we've written out this pretty basic prompt, and let's see what we get this, right? And the goal here, of course, is to make sure that ChatGPT has a strong understanding of the parameters that we're working with. So in this case, it's asking us the questions that it needs to know the answer to in order to give us the most efficient answer. I think that's actually one of the most powerful pieces of ChatGPT is that it has enough of a knowledge base that it can ask you questions in order for you to lay things out the best way. There's a lot of power in the tool here and much that could be defined. The reality of this is I'm not going to be able to answer these questions. This really comes down to Mike documenting this. But the beauty of building the processes, of course, is that they are very individualized and they're built based on what you need. So using a GPT to help you set all this up can be an awesome way to do it. Down here at the very bottom, it gives some just basic tips, but it does ask questions here at the very beginning. It's asking you to clearly define a play, which apparently I didn't do based on my questions. But once these things are defined, then it can give us much clearer directions. Mike, I would be super curious if you were able to ask some of these questions in your account in a more tailored way, what the outcome would look like for you and what kind of directions it would give you. I think in this case, I'm not giving it quite enough of a prompt for it to be really strong on the answer, but it's also asking
Yep.
questions that are really good here and very completely valid. So anyway, fun stuff. I think there's lots more to dig into there, but thanks for the example idea.